So if there was something I could do with technology that also made a social impact, that was something that always drove me. And Food and Ag just became kind of the next thing that I wanted to do.
Welcome to the FoodGrads podcast, the podcast that takes you on a fascinating journey into the hearts and minds of the amazing people who work in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. My name is Veronica, and I am a PhD candidate studying fat-based food emulsions. On this podcast, we share insights from professionals at all stages of their careers, find out what they do, why they do it, and how they are changing the food world one day at a time. So no matter what your passion is, there's always something for everyone in food, and we'll help you find it. On today's episode, we are talking about innovation and artificial intelligence in the food processing space, making an impact in the world, and the unique paths that you can take with an engineering degree. Our guest today is Harjeet Bajaj, President and CEO of Savormetrics. Savormetrics provides AI-driven sensor devices to food and agricultural companies. Their devices perform real-time, in-situ QA and QC. Their predictive quality metrics allow organizations to reduce costs and increase their customer satisfaction. Harjeet has over 14 years of work experience in various leadership and consultancy roles. He has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and management, and a master's degree in engineering, both from McMaster University. Harjeet is recognized internationally as an AI expert, having won numerous awards for developing commercially viable solutions in the fields of medical and healthcare industries. Today, he has his sights set on the ag and food sector and is ready to innovate it into the future. Thank you so much, Harjeet, for coming on the show. I'm so excited to be doing, for those who are listening, this is actually my first in-person interview, so very exciting stuff. We'll see if the audio sounds a lot different, but thank you so much, Harjeet, for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Veronica. I've been looking forward to this.
Perfect. I've really been excited about what you've done with Savormetrics in terms of the idea, how it's being implemented, because we talk about food safety, we talk about food waste, and many of the solutions are coming with the food waste and then dealing with it. So in the sense that you have, here's X amount of waste, now let's repurpose it and let's upcycle it. But really where you're coming in is trying to deviate that from even happening by using smart solutions. So would you be able to talk about what Savormetrics is, and maybe we'll talk about food waste?
Absolutely. So from our perspective, we looked at the food waste problem from two angles. So one angle is, can we apply something to the food product such that it doesn't go bad or stays in spec? And then the second angle is, can we identify quality metrics or that can be used in insightful ways so that you can avoid food waste or food quality issues. So our interest, being proponents of artificial intelligence for quite a number of years and having applied it in the medical industry and being very used to small amounts of data, we of course went down this direction. So our hypothesis was that if we could provide meaningful insights to food sector companies where they could move inventory smarter, process it smarter meaning, by using data, that they could reduce the amount of product that's wasted because it's spoiled or because it's out of spec. And that's the hypothesis we ran with, and very quickly we started becoming quite popular because we were able to make an impact on people's bottom lines very quickly by reducing the amount of product that is discarded because it's either spoiled or out of spec.
So from my understanding, you've done a lot of work in grains, is that correct?
That's correct. So our product does apply in the grain industry as well. So we have done some significant work in the grain industry as well.
To make it a little bit more tangible for our audience, would you be able to speak to a particular type of product? We could even go with the grains and just talk about how you would be assisting a processing facility in terms of helping with AI, sensors, solutions, and such.
Mm-hmm. So, whether it's a grain industry or it's a produce industry or it's meat, from our perspective, it doesn't matter. Our sensors are able to pick up these features, so these biochemical, biophysical features, beyond what our eyes can. So meaning we're going into the infrared region, and in some cases even beyond, looking at other types of sensors, and combine the features that we're able to extract from these sensors and then correlate it to a meaningful metric. So Veronica, that meaningful metric for a retailer might be shelf life. Right? That's a very important metric. It's not necessarily bricks or dry matter, which is what the industry has been used to, but that's a proxy. That's a proxy piece of information that they try to use to get an insight of how long something's going to last, right? So we, as opposed to working on building a bricks and dry matter device, we build an insight device that can give you shelf life. From there, then we're able to provide wisdom on where should you direct that inventory. So sell it local because it's got 5 days left, or do you really ship it to the other end of the country where by the time it gets there, now it's going to be spoiled, or you've got really a day left of its good shelf life and it's going to go bad on you on the shelf. So that's insight and wisdom. That's what we provide. So it's not just sensors. We're not a sensor company. We don't like to call ourselves that. We're not an AI company. We don't like to call ourselves that. We're experts at AI. We're experts at ultra low cost sensors, but it's the output of that, the insights and wisdom. That's what we are. We provide that to customers.
That could be, I know for a fact, that would be a very useful metric in terms of, especially for companies that might not have those staff members who have been on working for them for 20 plus years that know the product inside and out. If you're a QA tech coming in, it's your first year, you're getting better, but making these decisions, you don't have something that's very tangible to say. You're kind of hemming and hawing, and you don't always have the time to keep constantly going back to like a plant manager and that slows processes down. So this is something that can maybe help everyone get more on the same page.
That's exactly it. So, imagine how daunting it would be, Veronica, to be in a situation where you're a new staff. And in many cases, we've found that these are technically high turnover staff. They're maybe students that are doing this part-time. And now they've got to make decisions on billions of dollars worth of inventory. On where does it go? Even for food processors that we work with, there's decisions that need to be made on, for example, how much batter, at what temperature do you fry? And you've got a conveyance system there where inventory is moving at top speed. And at the end of the line, you're taking samples and you're doing an assessment of this. And then you've got to make a decision on how do we change it. So whether you're inexperienced or even experienced, it's a very daunting task to have to do that off of small samples on the side and then be held accountable to it. So, and that's where this comes in. If these eyes and ears can be there, whether it's in the lab, depending on our customer's process, we've got the big zapper, which goes at the end of the line, or if it's in line, we have to be able to provide these, again, insights and wisdom in real time so that they can make decisions on how to change parameters. Because if we can provide them with this level of insight and wisdom, they have the ability to make the changes. They're very intelligent with respect to what they need to change in order to get it back in line. But a quality assurance system or a control system needs to be provided that gives them this information, this feedback in close to real time. And then the magic starts to happen and the reduction in out-of-spec product or waste starts to take place.
Well, thinking to that, I would like to ask a little bit more, dive into many food products are not the same. So you can get a potato from one place, you get a potato. We act like they're the same thing, but they're really not. There's a lot of different chemicals, differences in that. So we're talking about having these standards and such, but how are you developing what these standards are to even give the solutions? Is it your customers that are saying, we know it's this, or is there some kind of protocol that you've established in order to determine this?
Really good question. That's a really good. And this is the part that makes this sector really exciting for us because there's so much to define. We feel that we're on the pioneering front, and in some cases, internally to organizations, that some of these standards are now being reinvented. We're also part of certain projects working with certain leading regulatory bodies around new standards. Because of this technology, you can now reinvent or invent, let's say, not even to call it reinvent, we can actually invent meaningful regulatory metrics as well. So within an organization, many times what we're finding is we build what the customer is looking for, and then we highlight what else it can do. New standards are now starting to pop up. Right? So these standards are around what are we looking at, because we can now pull out correlations and causations that are more biochemical and as opposed to just biophysical. But beyond that, we're also able to identify they are able to identify, let me clarify that, right? They're able to identify what are different things that they can do, what are different methods ingredients that they can use to get to the end result in a more effective way. So that's the sort of impact our technology is able to have. And even if we play a small part in that by identifying these key insightful metrics, we're able to impact some change on standards.
Wow, that would be great, because my mind as you were speaking is that food fraud is another thing that is a very big issue. We've talked about food waste, but I'm thinking about in the future, it could be at grocery stores looking at different fish, because I can't remember number at the top of my head, but I know there's a lot of fish that is under food fraud. So this could also help with that other piece, because I know there's been spoken about blockchain in that, but this might be an easier implemented solution.
You're hitting on all the right pulses here within the food sector. Early on, when we were building out our technology, one of the areas we were heavily focused on was food authenticity. So we've done significant amount of work in oils, edible oils, extra virgin olive oil being one of them, with honey and with even milk in certain parts of the world. COVID has done something that has expedited that. So we initially realized that there's an opportunity there, but maybe the world is not quite ready for it yet. But post-COVID, we're realizing that there's a lot of interest now around tools that can detect authenticity of food and beverages. So that is something that we are resurrecting on our end to provide these tools. Again, these are small, portable tools. One of the key things, Veronica, is that these tools have to work in the environment that these individuals are working in. Right? If it's a very expensive $1 million tool that is plugged into one particular location of the processing line, it won't provide them that ultimate value. So it's got to be a system that allows them to be able to use these tools in the environment within the processes that they run within. So meaning enable their processes further. So that's the work that we're doing on that end to make sure that that we're there to help the industry as food authentication, which relates to food safety, now starts becoming a major talking point.
That's so great. That's something that we definitely need more about in terms of food fraud. It's so, it's, I don't want to say rampant, but there's some high numbers, and it's a little startling. And for all I know, I could be eating things that I don't know what it is, and it becomes even a greater issue when it's allergies. I mean, fortunately, I don't have any allergies. For individuals who do, it's a matter of life and death.
It's a health issue, and then it snowballs into a public health issue as well. So definitely, it's an area of food safety, I guess, food quality that under food quality is food safety that has tentacles that impact the society in a broader way. So definitely is an area where we're going to see a lot of companies starting to innovate.
Right. And I'm speaking to the food safety and the health note. I was curious about how you got into Savormetrics, because I've seen your experiences. You've done a lot in the medical field and such. And the issues that we're talking about, I think you were in the field for 20 plus years in terms of seeing these types of issues. So if you'd be able to, maybe you could just walk through your journey to some key points and how you ended up with Savormetrics and the idea of dealing with these types of issues.
So we'll make a long story short, as short as I can possibly I can make it. But my initial foray into artificial neural networks was in undergrad. It goes all the way back to undergrad, working for an individual named Dr. Ian Bruce at McMaster University around building these next generation hearing aids. And that's where I cut my teeth and realized, wow, the opportunity that lies in front of us, provided that the processing capabilities improve over time and memory costs and capabilities improve and connectivity, etc. All of which us crazy guys back then had this belief that yes, that trajectory we're seeing in the increasing capability and the reduction in cost is going to continue over the course of the next 10, 15 years was going to happen. And that's where I picked up my initial understanding of it. And then did my master's in biomedical engineering applications, where I worked with a pharmaceutical company around diagnosis of a very serious disease, which eventually, many years later, led to a drug that developed. I started applying the concept of AI in different fields. And then as my career developed further onto the business side, I had the opportunity then to start building out businesses in different parts of the world. All of that kind of came together for me, and food sector was a sector that I had done a fair bit of work in, and I understood the pressures that they had working with very tight margins, with so much inventory that's thrown away, many times processed inventory, so meaning you've actually put a lot of value into it. There is no other industry that I see that is as resilient as the food and ag industry, where that's the amount of inventory that doesn't make its way all the way through, and yet they find a way to survive. So for me, it was a matter of time before all of these things came together. There was going to be that confluence that took place, and there was going to be an opportunity then to deploy systems that are AI-driven systems with sensors. So that's in a nutshell how I came about this. So I have a desire at the stage of life and career that I am in, and I've always kind of had this as something that drove me. That was the passion behind why I wanted to be working just in general was around making a difference. So if there was something I could do with technology that also made a social impact, that was something that always drove me. And food just became food and ag became kind of the next thing that I wanted to do.
That's wonderful, and it seems as though you've also made your own path in terms of you've moved around to different areas in terms of seeing where you could apply your skills, where you could improve, and then you've come here that's full circle, taking in all these different experiences. You've so well condensed it down, but I can see that there was so many different things throughout. And just because I'm thinking of our student audience and such, did you find that your supervisor, when you did your undergraduate, did they inspire you? Did you look for an undergrad research position? Did they just come out of nowhere? How did that little portion come out?
How did that come out? I was looking for something to do. Okay. So this is second year of undergrad. And as I just was perusing and thinking, how do I fill my summer? What do I do over the summer? I was fortunate to land on the website of Dr. Ian Bruce, and he was a brilliant researcher that had an article written about him, and he was doing work in the area of artificial intelligence and are using ANNs to solve complex problems. And he I believe it moved just from Johns Hopkins to McMaster University at that time. And he took the time out to meet with me, and I had a chance to talk with him, and I was mesmerized. And I was very fortunate that as just a second year student, as I was at that time, he was willing to bring me on over the summer. And inspiring for sure. I mean, he treated me just like any of his other grad students, his postdocs. I had an office space. I had my souped up computer. I think I even had probably the best computer there. So there was no, biases towards the most senior student getting the computer. And I was the envy of my lab. And I was also put into situations where I was allowed to attend conferences. There was a tinnitus problem that Dr. Bruce was working on at that time. He got me involved in that. And I got to meet with some very prolific researchers whose names now are godly now in the area of ANN and AI. And I got a good sense of what it takes to take a concept and to start moving it forward towards a product. And that is something that Dr. Ian Bruce, watching him and observing how, starting with nothing, just concepts, he was able to move things forward where this hearing aid company benefited immensely, these futuristic hearing aids that were designed that dealt with sensorineural hearing loss. So, and with other ailments like tinnitus, etc. So that gave me an unbelievable amount of confidence that you can go from a concept to a product very quickly. And it was, I observed that happen in front of me. And I played, of course, as a second year student, a very small role in that. But Dr. Bruce put me into situations where, I definitely felt like, hey, I'm a major contributing factor in this team. And even presenting PowerPoint slide decks that I had to put together and mentored and coached. And so it makes a huge difference. If you can find that right mentor that can help you identify something that becomes your passion. And proof of that it can last you, throughout your whole career.
Right. Wow. There's two things that really stood out to me, and that, to be honest, I'm a little surprised to hear about them seeing something go from concept to market, because you kind of hear in the academia space they're usually behind. That's usually what they say. Research, the industry is way far ahead of the academic research. But then the other thing as well is just, I think people forget how when you go to university or maybe college, you get so caught up in the coursework and attending these classes that you have these very brilliant minds that are teaching, and they might not go out and tell you, oh, would you like to come join my lab, and that you have to show that initiative to go there, but you never know where it could end up taking you, because you are right. Even as an undergraduate, you might have the opportunity to go to these conferences and then meet these other brilliant minds and then come together and such, and really just exposing to yourself as much as you can. You never know where it's going to take you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about networking. And the sooner you can start learning about the power of networking, the better. And you hit the nail on the head there. One thing led to another. And that's how my master's thesis came about as well. And I'm another researcher at McMaster University who realized what I was working on, and I had an opportunity to speak with in an informal way. I hadn't applied for it. And I realized that there's a major pharmaceutical company that'll be backing this, and I'll have an opportunity to take a real serious role. I would be able to function within the lab and maybe lead some aspects within the lab. And as kind of fortune would have it, there was an individual that left the lab, and then I raised my hand and said, yes, I'll help, but took on a bigger role. And that became an unbelievable experience for me. And from there, then my career then moved into many different directions because of the networking I was able to do even during my master's. So my advice would be that, if you have an opportunity to get involved in additional things, just to explore and learn about your own self, about your own capabilities, what your own desires and interests are, take it. And find mentors. To me, a supervisor is a mentor. At the end of the day, it's a coach. Someone very early in your career that's going to help you shape who you are.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I also did my undergraduate thesis which I started off as a research assistant. So I came in, I helped another PhD student. So I helped them through research. I didn't know where it was going to lead me. I just thought, it would be good for me to just learn what a food science lab is, because I was in the chemistry program. I thought, if I want to go in the food industry, I need to get some food science experience, but I don't have any. So what's the best thing I can do? My TA was talking to me about, I need some research help. It's like, I'll do it, even though I had no clue what I was doing. I jumped in and such, and it really led to that, or even just volunteering with FoodGrads. I fast forward today, I would have never thought I'd be doing a podcast sitting in this room like this. Far from it. I thought I'd be in product development, but here I am.
And I'm amazed by all the things you're involved in. Maybe there should be a podcast on you, and maybe we'll flip the table and I'll ask you the questions. But
I don't know. It's just taking the next step and such. And I was wondering that to your story, you mentioned AI and such. Did you follow a topic or a skill, or was we a lot of people say follow your passion, and I'm of the camp that you don't really follow a passion. That's of my belief. You follow what interests you, and then you build the skills, and then you never knew you'd be able to do something until you go, I had this skill to pick this up, and I have this skill. So did you find there was something inherently that you were following? You mentioned about you wanting to do change. Was that your driving force, or was it maybe just one step at a time?
The desire to make an impact, like for me at least, that's the driving factor. Can I make an impact? So that impact to me, if it involves impacting others, that gets me excited, right? So that's my passion, right? So there's this saying that I really like, and I probably won't say it as elegantly as it says it's written, but something that you really care about and you work hard for is passion, right? Mm-hmm. Something that you don't really care about but have to work hard for is stress, right? So that, if you identify something that truly is your passion, right? And that may be, again, it's never a singular linear sort of an equation. It's a confluence or an overlap of what your skill sets are, what skill sets you want to develop, plus intrinsically what motivates you, right? And for me, it's about seeing that my solutions have an impact on others, right? That intrinsically drives me. So the overlap of that, not to get too geeky and techie, but then I'm drawing a Venn diagram here in my mind here. But the overlap of that is something that now drives that passion, right? So, and if it's passion, you'll work hard for it, and you'll spend time on it. And if you just put in a little dose of patience, you'll watch yourself succeed.
I think another way of the way I like to put it in my head is not necessarily the word passion. I like to think of the word values, like what do I value? I feel that's a little bit easier for me. I think of the same way that I'd like to make a difference. I don't know what the difference is, but that's something I value. Maybe it's not a passion, but I think that you don't have to also necessarily be caught up in figuring out what exactly it is. I think maybe it's just my way of taking stress off myself.
Hey, that's actually quite brilliant. I might steal that from you. Right. So I think, that's the key thing. What is it that you value? Yeah. Right. And I think if you value something, so going along your thread, if you value something so much that you're willing to put hours behind it, because no matter what, you're going to have to work hard. There's no real shortcut. Where if there are moments of shortcuts, those are anomalies. They're outliers. But if those values allow you to put that extra time in and put that hard work in, and then that's I think that's a good way of describing it.
I'd like to shift the conversation just a little bit in terms of, I have someone who's sitting in front of me, very well known about the topic of AI. And I feel that word has been very much a buzzword in the past year. I think everyone just thinks of AI and ChatGPT and just getting this generative AI. But I know that that is not the correct term for everything. And it feels it's not software anymore. It's an AI software, and it might not necessarily be. Would you be able to just speak briefly as to what AI is, or maybe how Savormetrics is involved in AI, and go from there, please?
Certainly. So to me, AI is another way of solving a problem. So whereas in the past, we've been looking to model things. So we're looking to understand what are all the variables that correlate to something. And then we try to get to an understanding of causation then from there, like what variables cause what. And our tendency is that, okay, well, these variables are not of importance, scrap them. Let's get it down to a set of variables that we can then manage. Whereas AI takes the opposite approach. More variables, the better. Add more. Because we know that if we have a lot of variables within this black box, and we're using these concepts of machine learning and that you hear about, that within the AI you have a lot of specialty areas where you're doing a lot of feature engineering on the forefront. Then you're getting it, mobilizing it towards the machine learning algorithms and figuring out how to set the right parameters there based on the mathematical characteristics of those feature spaces. And then on the end of it, you're now looking at how do you make sure that this system continues to work intelligently, even if your basis changes somewhat. So meaning in the food sector, it's seasonality, right? So if seasonality happens, we shouldn't have to go back and retrain everything again. If we've built this brain the right way, if we've structured it the right way, it should be able to transfer its learning, right? And be able to now deploy it for this slightly different looking seed, let's say, just as an example, right? And then you should be able to continuously learn as well. The system needs to get continuously smart. So it's very similar to a human brain, right? So imagine everything is wiped clear. And for the first time ever, Veronica, I showed you a tennis ball. It's green. It's got lines on it. And I told you this is a tennis ball. Over your lifespan, if you saw a tennis ball that was skinned, bite mark, maybe broken, a truck ran over that tennis ball and is no longer even green, you'd be able to piece the features together and say, that's a tennis ball, right? Whereas traditionally we would say if round, if has white lines on it, it's green and furry, then tennis ball. That's kind of your if, then sort of logic. This is different sort of logic. This is based on features where even if it doesn't look exactly the same, you can still make that inference, a judgment call, and say that's a tennis ball. Right? So that's the difference. If I put an analogy in place, that's the difference between modeling something off of a few variables versus using a machine learning method to be able to now do that level of judgment and provide that sort of output.
Okay. It sounds so easy, so to say, on the surface, but I know that there's way more that goes into it because the brain is just, we've evolved to be able to tell what a tennis ball is after someone tells us that's a tennis ball, but being able to tell a machine and for it to learn and then making sure that it doesn't veer off course and then start thinking that it's not about just it, and it's not just about giving it data, right? Like that's not, you have to be a little bit more work.
You're bang on. It's not, so many times we feel that, hey, it's one of our interview questions as well when we hire, if someone says more data, that's a bit of a cop-out. Right? So yes, of course you want more data. You want your system to get experience just like as a human mind would in many different areas. But then you have to be able to build elements in that allows it to make an inference, a judgment call. And that judgment call has to be accurate. And that's where the race is, quite frankly, Veronica. So the ones that are able to build truly commercially viable AI systems versus ones that aren't able to build it. And that's where the expertise comes in, and that's where the various sorts of algorithms working on different ends of the AI, the transfer learning, the continuous learning piece, etc. How you do that, there's so many different ways of tackling that problem. That's where the ingenuity is.
Part of me for me asking, but is it just a lot of math equations? Because I'll be honest, to me, AI, I'm trying to learn more about it, but a lot of it is a black box. To me, is it about, and we said the data, but is it giving it different, like is someone there programming different algorithms? Is someone there saying yes or no, and then you just keep doing that, and then all of a sudden you have it, which I know it's not the case, but is it a combination of physics, math? Like what's going on behind there a little bit?
Lots is. So I'm part of many committees where there's conversations around what makes an AI engineer, okay, or an AI scientist. Is there a way in which we can turn this into an undergrad program? So for a university in the U.S., I'm actually on a steering committee there around building a undergrad program, and one of many that are having these discussions. So when we talk about math, what are we talking about, right? It's calculus, it's linear algebra, it's statistics. But is it more than that? I mean, when we look at chemometrics, for example, it's the application of math and stats for chemical-related situations. When we look at digital signal processing, that's a different form of mathematics. It's also mathematics, but it's now giving you a different perspective on how to solve signal-related problems. So how broad does a AI engineer have to be in order to be called an AI engineer or an AI scientist, whatever the discipline it lands in, is quite broad. It's quite broad. So no, you can never have one individual that's an expert at everything. So there's no such thing as, so meaning you'll have individuals that are experts at the image processing side of things. So, now they've applied machine learning to that piece and now they're more computer vision expert. You have individuals that are very good at creating the machine learning models, and some of those models are already built. And as you're seeing, open source has starting to take place. It doesn't mean you can just take them plug and play or just tweak the hyperparameters and you get the results. You'll have to build code or algorithms around those, and maybe sometimes even go in and tweak them. So it's quite broad. So that definitely it's mathematics, but from what angle, what we're finding as we go through our exercise, we've been at it for about 1.5 years now, is that it's quite broad. And if we really want to build this generation, proliferate AI engineers or AI scientists in the future, and if we're taking the approach that let's start from an undergrad, then it's going to be quite a broad field. And then maybe there's subspecialties where now you start understanding start getting some domain knowledge and understanding the domain. So food science, and has also its own angle, and we're starting to talk about healthcare applications, having some domain knowledge around those disciplines. Maybe that's that adds additional value. I'm biased that way because that's how my career started. I feel that those having that domain knowledge and understanding some of those fundamental principles are very important.
Wow. I'm so happy that you said that it makes me feel a little bit more, because again, it seemed like AI came out of nowhere, and then you're sitting here as someone who's maybe, I've done data research, I've done analyzing data using different, classic statistics, those types of things, and then you sit here going, could I even go into AI and such? So hearing you talk about how there's more subspecialties, it makes you understand a little bit more. It's not this black box of one person who just knows how to make their whole program in front. You need a whole, and now I can start to see why you're bringing in more people for Savormetrics, is having those different individuals with those specialties, because it's a team to create a program in AI and all that.
Okay. That's 100% accurate.
Okay. I think that also takes a little bit off of the, if a student's listening to this and they're a food scientist, it doesn't mean that they're out of luck because they went to school for food science and such. They can starting with somewhere. Actually, this might be a good question for you. If someone wanted to start maybe getting more interested in AI and that, or maybe start building up those skills or even tools or software skills, where would you recommend that they start to incorporate this learning? Like, how would they start to learn?
So lots of programs out there now. I mean, starting from the very basics, and you can even find some of these as free courses that universities are providing, and there's quite a few portals that you can use to get that fundamental knowledge. But you can also get a little more detailed knowledge where you start now also programming too. So I think start from there. Start with some of these courses, and if you're resourceful enough, you'll find places where you can start sinking your teeth in and starting to understand, and just creating that knowledge base in your mind of what are the different areas of AI and where it can be applied, and then start going a little bit more specific in an area that you're most interested in. In our case, as I mentioned, it's food and ag. You had on a point around food scientists. Like, we're right now looking to hire a couple of food scientists on our team. It's very important as we train our system that we have food scientists that understand the biochemistry of what's happening before we even create training programs for our AI. Right. So it becomes very important that individuals that have those areas of subspecialty have a desire or interest in helping to build out these AI models, these AI, as we call it on our platform, we call it Dr. Sam. We personified it. Again, Dr. Sam is our AI engine, is what we call it. So in order to make Dr. Sam brighter and smarter, we need that intelligence coming in. And then it's as I mentioned to you, it's yes, the data, it's the information that you're talking, but then it's also the insights, and then it's also the wisdom piece. So what do you do with that insight that's provided? And having a food scientist that can also help with, well, if you're finding that you have a high probability of forming biofilm because of these reasons, and this is your environment in which let's say you're growing something, now here's what you can possibly do. And then training systems so that we have decision support systems on our end that are able to provide to the customer possible solutions, right? So, and that can be also, you can use artificial intelligence for that as well. So, I mean, that's where you're talking about generative AI, being able to scour through a lot of articles, et cetera, and then providing what could be possible best practices. So, so lots of opportunities to get involved from the angle that you feel you're most interested in. If you're not interested in coding, you don't have to be involved from that perspective.
Again, that's good to hear, because again, I sit in my PhD and I've done the statistics side, and I have to. What we've spoken about here is here's the texture properties. Here is the microscopy. As a scientist, you have to put all these types of things together and such. So I've thought, well, is there anything in the AI space? And I will say from personal experience, I don't find AI paper AI paper readers very good, in my opinion. And they tout that they're supposed to be very good, and I don't feel that they are. So there's still that human side to it. But just the fact that you don't have to be, it feels like there's such a rush for everything, but maybe you might have more specialty than you realize.
Absolutely. There are. It's a build, Veronica. Think of it this way, right? So I mean, many times you'll see things get quite hyped. Even with ChatGPT, you're seeing that too. But there's going to be a build, and it's going to take time, and it's going to require a lot of innovation and invention, even of certain things. And there's a role for everybody to play in that.
And then that leads me to wanting to know of your opinion. I've found that Canada has a little bit been slower, and maybe particularly, I should say, the Canadian food industry has been very slow at adopting new technologies, which you look at the manufacturing sector, there's like their margins are slow, their margin you look to other sectors and they really seem to be moving really fast, the tech space and that. But then you come to the food sector, and so many of these are small businesses that are still doing a lot of hand packaging. They're still doing a lot of things that don't seem very technological. Do you have any opinions on why this might be the case?
At the end of the day, it boils down to numbers. At the end of the day, it's all data. Again, not trying to be too much of a square head engineer here, but at the end of the day, if you look at what they're up against and what their margins are, what their top line is, in order for, and the stresses and strains that they have with respect to regulations, et cetera, it is very hard for them to deploy a system that doesn't work for them, just like any other industry. So meaning if you're walking in, and this is what's happened within the industry over the years, where people are walking in with these really expensive $1 million or hundreds of $1,000s worth of equipment and saying, I'm going to plug that right here in this part of your process, and it's going to be able to identify defects for you by using various sorts of lighting technologies. It doesn't work for them, because at the end of the day, they don't see that benefit in a reduction of waste or out-of-spec product. Right? Now, why don't they? That's where your effort starts. Around understanding what are their processes. Well, you can't just put one unit here because you could have faults happening here, here, and there. So now what sort of system do they need? They need a system that is portable. They need a system that maybe can be, it's cheap enough or low cost enough. It's not cheap, it's low cost enough that can be plugged in at different locations. So now from there you start. Now you've understood what their requirements are. They don't want data. They don't want to build a team of data scientists or analysts within their organization that is going to take all that data and flip it into some sort of meaningful piece of information. Forget about insights. They want you to do that. So if you're able to provide them with a solution as opposed to a shiny object which you're force fitting into their process line and make it affordable. So meaning, getting now very specific, it's got to be to the point where it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. It's got to be at hundreds of dollars. It's got to be at that level. So if you can get it down to hundreds or thousands of dollars and you're now able to provide them with insights they can action and they can see results, they'll pay for it. Everybody will pay for that if there's an ROI. So that's the very important term to understand. It's rule number one is try to, is there an ROI for the customer, for what we're doing? Right. And the customer is going to do that calculation too. Maybe we can walk the customer through that calculation. And up until now, with the sort of systems people have been trying to plug in into the food and ag sector, the capital cost has been quite high. The insights are not being provided. So I don't blame them necessarily for not being on top of technology deployment like other sectors.
Your answer does make sense. And then as well, we say the word food, and that we've kind of talked about through this whole interview, is food is not just apples and it's not just oranges. You have everything from a sandwich all the way down to creating pasta and having solutions that can fit so many people. And to what you said, each plant is different. Like everyone has a specialty. Not every plant is going to create with the auto industry, a car for the most part looks the same way. I mean, but there's more of a structure. Then you come to the food industry and you're just all over the place. You go from hot to cold to frozen. And, I could see how food processors might also have difficulties bringing in people for trust and custom solutions, and everything's so all over the place.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I mean, there's a lot of variability there. There's a considerable amount of variability there. But at the end of the day, we also find that some of the metrics they're looking for from a theme standpoint are the same. So then the challenge becomes on our end, how do we build things that are scalable that can apply across these different sectors? Right? And that's where, again, the concept of just doing modeling or just calibration curve-based type solutions where it doesn't work in their environment. So how do you build a solution that'll work in their environment continuously? Plus, on our end, can we have that tool now also apply for grains and for seeds and for meat and for other things as well? Because we also have to run a business too. So, and that's in a nutshell where the winners versus the losers are being separated in our line of business. If you're able to apply it to various sectors, you win. And if you're not able to, then the costs are just too high to sustain.
It's difficult. And how do you not, like personally from your perspective, how don't you you're working hard, you're scaling and such. How do you move fast when the world's moving really fast without going crazy at the same time, so to say? Like, how are you constantly evolving without getting caught up in the buzz or getting caught up? Like, what is your learning process to know I maybe shouldn't go into this avenue? I should focus on this and just not caught up. How am I trying to say this? How do you not get caught up in the fast-moving world, but focusing on one idea and moving forward with it? I guess that's how I'm going with it.
It's a good question. It's a very good question. And that's something that as an organization, every individual, every leader within the organization has to be asking that on a continuous basis. It is very easy, Veronica, to get caught up in that really shiny, exciting deployment we could do where we could get so much limelight because we're detecting an adulteration in a food item. You have to be careful of that. So there's many business principles you follow. One of the business principles you follow is that you stay true to yourself. So similarly as you would, as just an individual, as a human being, the organization has to stay true to itself. So what does that mean? It means, what are our core capabilities? What are we truly expert at? What have we built that truly we can scale and put out there with customers and can service it? Now, there are, like within Savormetrics, within our organization, we like to have an element of excitement and fun as well, meaning every fiscal year we're working on one crazy thing, this one exciting, funky thing on the side, and everybody kind of galvanizes around it, and we come up with something that's unique. And one of these is something that we're probably going to launch sooner than we thought, and this is a device for everyday consumers. But so again, as long as it's calculated and as long as you've thought it through and you make sure that it's not going to affect your core business and there's a rationale behind it and you're able to put meaningful resources behind it and there's additional benefits you get off of it, fine, right? But again, it takes that sort of discipline as it would in your personal life, similar to running your personal life. You don't go chasing 3 PhDs at the same time, right? At some point you say, okay, this is our focus, right? And
I like that. That's a really good way of going about it. And it just sounds, at the end of the day, just reflect. You might not know, but just reflect. Is that something you want to focus on? Don't just go into it. Don't start your day and then at the end of it, all of a sudden you're pursuing a second PhD. No, that would be a pretty crazy thing. But I guess it does mean just reflecting that. Because I was trying to think about from a student's perspective, because I've spoke with students and such, and when they're in their first year, they just feel like a lot of people find difficulties with school. What's the point? And all that type of stuff. And, maybe I should have done this. Maybe I should have done this. And as someone who might be graduating, hopefully soon, you start to think, what kind of avenue? You could do all these different things. So you want to try everything at once. But I guess it's just a matter of reflecting. And then if you do spend time with it for a bit, you don't have to necessarily keep going with it. Just don't make sure you're not moving forward because you're caught up in some kind of trap. It's difficult. I feel for students who, fortunately for students, it might be difficult. You come out of high school, it feels like the world's moving so fast and everything, and I should be doing everything, and I should be becoming an AI specialist, but then I really love food science, and then I love this, like choosing those options. It's hard for them.
And if I may, Veronica, it gets even faster. As you get into the working world, things start moving around you really quickly because there's so many other individuals that are around you now, so many things changing, and your personal life starts to change as well. I think one of the things you learn very quickly is how do you block a lot of that out, right? And then how do you figure out what is your pace? Everybody has a speed that they go at, a cadence that they can continue to sustain, and it's figuring that out. And I think that's really what you start figuring out in university or in post-secondary education. You really start figuring that out a little bit about yourself. What is that pace I can go at and still succeed, right? There's sprinters, there's marathon runners, there's middle distance runners, and I know it's a very loose analogy, but it's, you've got to figure out who you are, and you can get to your finish line. Everybody's finish line is different. You can get to your finish line as long as you've defined your finish line the right way, but you have to figure out your speed.
Yeah, everyone does have their own pace and such, and we talk about it. It seems so simple when you say it out loud, but then it's really difficult in the moment. But sometimes, striving for simplicity is the best way in the crazy. So, yeah.
Keep it simple, right?
So I think this is a good place to let it go, but I know we've talked about a lot of different things throughout our conversation, but if we could bring it back, I have 2 last questions to ask you. So the first one is, taking everything into consideration, what advice would you give to students who are just starting out in their careers?
Find something that you're really interested in. So my word is passion, your word is values. Find what you value the most, something that you're passionate about, and then don't hesitate to put that hard work in. You're going to have to put that hard work in. Better put it towards something that you find extremely valuable or you're passionate about. Again, with a little bit of patience, you'll find that you'll hit upon success at some point, and enjoy that journey. Don't rush it. I've been in that situation too as I graduated. All of us have been in that situation where we feel we've got to run with the race and figure out what race you're running first, right? Is it a sprint? Is it a middle distance race, or is it a marathon? What is it that you're really excited about? What is it that you really value? Then stick to it.
I like that. And the last question, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me by emailing me. My email address is harjeet@savormetrics.com.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to link that in the show notes for anyone who's looking to know more about that. Thank you so much, Harjeet, for coming on the show. Thank you for having me in person, and this was amazing. I love some in-person interviews, definitely something now I want to do more of, but also teaching me about so many different aspects, from everything from savormetrics to AI to just general career advice, and giving me some good reminders. So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Veronica. Thank you for having me.
Thank you everyone so much for listening to episode 79 of the FoodGrads podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found by clicking on the FoodGrads website and clicking on the Student and Grads tab. There you can find any notes to past or future episodes. Is there someone you would like us to interview on the show? Perhaps yourself. Or maybe there's a certain career path you would like us to explore? Then let us know. You can email me at veronica.hislop, hislop, @foodgrads.com, or reach out to me on any of our social media channels. Hope to hear from you. One of the things that I'm actively trying to learn more about is innovations happening in the food sector. That in itself is a big endeavor, considering that I'm still trying to become an expert in my own fat-based water and oil emulsions, and the food and agriculture industry is just big. I mean, there's so much that's happening right now, with the big elephant in the room being artificial intelligence. Though I do feel that word is being thrown around a lot these days, and to be honest, I didn't really know if my definition matched what it actually is, so that's exactly why I wanted to get Harjeet on the podcast, an expert in AI who could bring some groundedness to this discussion and speak well to its use case in the food industry. I was really impressed with Harjeet speaking to what artificial intelligence is, how Savormetrics is using this as a base towards what they're doing for their customers and dealing with food waste, and just all the potential applications of it. And let me just say, in-person interviews are awesome, and I hope I get to do more, but I digress. Harjeet has this great energy to him, which makes you feel like you can create a path based on your passions, that there are opportunities out there, that we can really change things up if you put the hard work in and learn and just go for it. I'm really excited to see what the next stage of Savormetrics is, and to see how their team is really going to continue to help customers in dealing with their food waste, and how the food industry seems like a really exciting place right now in terms of innovation, and who knows, it could be the one who makes those changes. So anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.